And then move forward a couple of years to 1943. You've been through 14 years of depression and New Deal and now war. And if you look at the map of Europe in 1943, you see that Hitler is in control of Europe from Stalingrad to North Africa to the English Channel. And the part that Hitler isn't controlling is controlled by Stalin. Imagine being a lover of freedom in 1943. And in that dark and terrible year, 3 women stood up in America and launched a movement for freedom. Isabel Patterson wrote a book called The God of the Machine, taking on the humanitarian argument for big government. Rose Wilder Lane published a book called The Discovery of Freedom, in which she talked about how in all of human history, in her view, there had been only 3 moments of real attempts to create freedom, and we were about to give up the 3rd one. And then most famously, of course, in 1943, the 3rd of those great women, Ayn Rand, published a book called The Fountainhead, which became a huge bestseller, became a movie, a hit movie, created an entire movement behind that book. If those women had not stood up, who knows what kind of movement we might have. The next year, in 1944, Friedrich Hayek published a book called The Road to Serfdom. And that book had more of an impact on creating an intellectual movement. It was read by academics. It was read in particular by young graduate students and college students who would go on to be great academics. But it was not just an academic book. It was certainly the least academic of Hayek's books. Hayek thought it was essentially a book for the intellectuals, but it turned out there were a lot more intellectuals in America than Hayek realized. The book became a bestseller. It was excerpted in the Reader's Digest. It was turned into a cartoon that ran in Look magazine, a hugely popular magazine at the time, had a real impact there. And then 2 years later, as the war ended, Leonard Read created the first free market think tank in America, the Foundation for Economic Education. So Americans did respond to the New Deal with a new movement to restore freedom and constitutional government. And now freedom is under assault again. We're being told that it's time for a New Deal. The cover of Newsweek says, "Are we all socialists now?" The article was a little ambiguous, but yes, the basic argument was yes. Statism is on the march, helped once again by an atmosphere of crisis and panic, and it's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to let the immensity of the challenge intimidate us. But the immensity of the challenge didn't stop Thomas Paine. It didn't stop Frederick Douglass. It didn't stop Ayn Rand and Friedrich Hayek, and we must not let it stop us. Speaking of summer soldiers and sunshine patriots, a few weeks ago I was joking about some free market economists who chose not to sign the Cato Institute's ad opposing the stimulus. And there are many good reasons that people might have done that. They don't sign other people's writings. They say, I do my own writing. I don't sign other people's things. I don't sign joint statements. I disagree with some small part of the statement, even though I agree with the thrust of it. So I understand why some people don't want to sign other people's manifestos and so on. But I was joking with these, with some of the people who had declined to sign the ad, and I told one of them, someday you'll be sorry your name wasn't on that roll of honor. And I quoted the St. Crispin's Day speech from Shakespeare's Henry V to him. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, while any speaks that stood with us upon St. Crispin's Day. I think that it is important that we stand up, and I think the person I said that to will be sorry that he didn't do that. The challenge we face will not stop us. Don't let it stop you either. More than 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson and his fellow signers of the Declaration of Independence committed themselves to the cause of American liberty with these words. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And they weren't kidding. 12 signers had their homes ransacked and burned by the British. 9 more died from wounds or hardships of the Revolutionary War. None, however, lost their sacred honor. And you know, we talk about the statesmen and the military leaders and the philosophers who made us free, but their work was made possible by the farmers and the merchants and the printers who provided the kinds of support without which these great deeds could not have been done. If you read Jim Powell's book, The Triumph of Liberty, you read about people who were not geniuses and heroes who made the freedom movement work. Think about the Quaker merchant, Benjamin Furley, who provided money and lodging for William Penn and John Locke when they needed it. Or Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a housewife and mother who spent 50 years campaigning for women's rights. The great libertarian campaigns for free trade and the abolition of slavery depended not just on their leaders and orators, but on thousands of pamphleteers, contributors, precinct walkers, and envelope stuffers. And today, you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home to stuff envelopes on the internet and make phone calls to your neighbors and your friends and make sure people hear about the message they need to hear. And so I want to end today by telling you about a statue that stands in the heart of Chicago, that great enterprising city, hog butcher for the world, tool maker, stacker of wheat, and if we were writing that poem today, we would add capital allocator for the world. This statue in the heart of downtown Chicago shows 3 great men who made the American Revolution. One of them you know, his name is George Washington. He stands in the middle. The other names you may not know, Robert Morris and Haym Salomon. They didn't get the fame. There are not courses about them. There are no movies about them. But they provided the funding that kept Washington's troops in the field and kept men like James Madison able to live in Philadelphia and participate in the Continental Congress. And so I like to think of that statue as a symbol of our partnership, our commitment to the cause of freedom. And let it be a reminder to us that we must not fail to live up to the example they set for us. Thank you very much.